The cosmos is within us. We are made of star stuff. We are a way for the universe to know itself. Carl Sagan.
Welcome to the Lessons from Nature podcast, modeling the secrets of the bees. Hosted by Mark Rubin.
If you hear my voice, you're alive. And if you're alive because you're part of a team of people who trade money for work in different ways. All human beings do work to earn money, to trade for different forms of energy. Even if you grow your own food and produce your own electricity, it's likely you didn't mine the metal for the shovels that you used to plant your garden or the minerals you needed to build solar panels. And that's because we use money to trade work with each other. And that means we're all part of the same team. Today on the Lessons from Nature podcast, we'll be discussing Secret 9 from Honey is Money. It takes a team. It's about the organization of work that enables collaborative species to work together to maximize the rate of energy transfer by doing the least amount of work in the shortest period of time, the most efficiency. I'd like to introduce my co-host, Ram Nair. Ram is a chartered professional coach, master learning facilitator, and holds a diploma in high performance coaching. He's been the head coach for the Canadian national badminton team, the Canadian national para badminton team, the Mumbai Rockets of the Premier Badminton League, and the Vancouver Lawn and Tennis Badminton Club. He's the author of 2 books, The Sport of Life and From Confusion to Clarity. Ram will co-host 4 episodes with me, where we will discuss the psychological secrets of the bees through the lens of the human business of making money and the bee business of making honey. Welcome, Ram. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So today, Ram, we're talking about an area that I know is very meaningful to you, which is about teamwork. And we're going to talk about teamwork in the context of the bee business of making honey and the human business of making money. But in particular, since you are a professional coach, what we're really going to talk about is the idea of winning. And winning in this context means organizing a group of people in a way that creates a game that enables them within the boundaries of the rules to win. So first, talking about the bee roles in the hive. And there are different job functions inside a beehive. And there's different kinds of bees. And there's different ages of bees, different skill levels of bees, different strengths of bees. And all these things come together in some kind of magical optimization of teamwork to enable the bees to gather energy efficiently, store energy efficiently, reproduce efficiently, gather information from their habitat efficiently, and survive till next spring. That's the game. They've been around for 100 million years playing this game. The long-running sport, the sport of survival. And the job functions go like this. The queen bee's job is simply to manage the rate of reproduction in the hive by laying eggs at a certain rate. What she's doing is she's sensing the amount of pollen and energy in her habitat. And she's trying to lay eggs 21 days in advance of the flowers being there, because that's how long it takes to recruit and train a worker bee. The worker bees are females, and they don't typically reproduce. They don't lay eggs unless something goes wrong with the queen. What they do is they have a life cycle, which I'll come back to in a minute. The male bees, the drone bees, the primary job, I say, is they just wait for a virgin queen to hatch, and they try to mate with her, and then they die in the process. And that's their entire role. And that's why there's a minimum number of those bees in the hive, because they're just consuming resources, just waiting to spread the one chance in a zillion to spread their genetic information. So there's these different roles. Now on the worker bees, the female worker bees, they start out as eggs, and then they become larvae, and then they become baby bees. The next phase of a baby bee is called a nurse bee. A nurse bee is just an older, like a toddler. And the nurse bee will bring the baby bee honey from inside the hive, moving around because they can't fly yet. A nurse bee is just a little older. They can't leave the hive yet. And when the nurse bees get a little bit older, they become wax bees. They develop glands that enable them to make wax. And they just repair the inside of the hive. And then after that, they become a forager. And they leave the hive and they go out and they get the energy, the sugar, the money, and they try to survive outside the hive, dangerous place, birds, other insects trying to get them. And if they make it back, they bring back the honey in the hive. And throughout this process, there's training and communication and organization. And so those things have direct parallels into what you do with both the different sort of strengths and capabilities of roles, the communication and the training, which comes through dances, bee dances. So that's sort of the background of bee teamwork. What I just explained was what's called a division of labor, and how the work of keeping the hive alive and gathering energy is distributed across the different kinds of bees and different ages of bees and stuff. The impact on productivity of this is that when bees are specialized in these functions, they become quite skilled at those functions. And this improves the efficiency of the hive. The division of labor improves efficiency because they're just focused on one thing until they go to the next thing. And so in terms of a team, in terms of understanding the strengths and weaknesses of individuals, both as individual players and teams, what stories could you tell about the division of skill and labor on a team and your experiences in maximizing sort of the performance of the overall team?
So I'm going to give you a macro example. Of course, as I've highlighted in my book, The Sport of Life, sport mirrors life, mirrors business. They're all sort of the same thing, but I'm going to give you a very practical one about athletes and performance, right? So an athlete needs to perform. Back in the day, it might have been the athlete and a coach. And then later on, we realized that, there was more things happening because some athletes had great coaches, or maybe they had the same coach, but maybe it's the same coach with very similar athletes, but the results are different. Well, what's happening? Well, then we went, oh, wait a minute. We came up with an idea that it was a group of three, and the three was the athlete's family, parents, and the coach. Now we've blown that up way up, and now we call it the IST, the Integrated Support Team. So whether you're dealing with an output performance of one athlete or of a team, they need an integrated support team. So depending on what you want as an output, so imagine it this way, that your queen bee is managing the output, right? In this case, the queen bee is maybe not the athlete, but maybe it's the high performance director, which is also a role that I've held. My job as a high performance director is to then figure out what the best thing for my team or individual athletes about. And what will happen is I'm going to create that integrated support team. So all of the different parts that are needed. Do we need a chiropractor or a physio? Do we need both? Do we need a massage therapist? Do we need cold tanks? A great story about that is we found ourselves at the Youth Olympics in 2010 in Singapore, and it was very, very hot. And we got the largest garbage cans we could find, brand new, dumped in a bunch of ice and water. We managed to get something in support of our athletes because that was the job. The job was, we need to support this athlete. We need to support this athlete fast. And if it's a cold tub that the doctor requires, then my job is to go out, run, and go find that. I can't emphasize enough how whatever we might think, every single component of that team is important. Without that tub, we don't have a cold bath. Without the cold bath, we don't have a cool down. Without a cool down, we don't have recovery. Without recovery, we don't have performance. And it was all because of the tub.
Yeah.
So every single part of that, there is no member of a team that does not play an important role if you assemble that team correctly.
Appreciate your story. And I like sort of thinking it through, both in terms of bees, but also in business. People are specialized and there's handoffs between different processes. And what you're optimizing in a sporting arena is the performance of a person. And in a business, you're optimizing the performance of the money. You're trying to make it more efficient as the work is being done. Let's talk next about building a hive and how the bees work together to create a hive. Bees all work together to construct hives by producing wax and shaping it into these honeycomb structures. By working together in this collective way, bees can construct larger and more intricate and more structurally sound hives, and this gives them more space for storing the energy in the honey and the protein in the pollen and for making babies. You just described a process by which you're sort of synthesizing what's needed for optimum performance. You being the coach, what kind of questions are you asking yourself and others to try to figure out how to assemble your hive in a way that gives you the best results?
So that's so interesting a question, because having traveled all over the world and being in different environments, I look at a hive. When you say hive, I say environment. What we learn in sports psychology is a very simple thing, that the more closer to the home environment that person's setting is, the more comfortable they are, which then allows them now to focus on the job at hand, which is to win the competition. So let's think about it this way. If you wind up in some place, wherever that is, and it's super hot and there's no air conditioning, how will you perform? Because you're going to be so busy trying to keep yourself cool that your energy is being spent in the wrong place, right? As the person that needs to perform.
Sure.
So we have so when you ask the question, how do I figure that out? You figure that out by asking the people that need to perform. So tell me, what kind of environment works for you? I will tell you that on any national team, we have an advanced group of people that show up at the place. They're going to show up before the Pan Am Games Village. So you're going to have to build that environment. So food things, our athletes' lounges. What are, as Canadians, what are we going to have? We're going to have two things always. We're going to have granola bars, and we're going to have Tim Hortons coffee. Okay, that's going to be there. So building the environment is both physical and it's psychological. I've translated that for companies I've worked with in the executive coaching space and said, okay, you want production? Take a look at your physical environment. Like, how is it set up? If it's too comfortable, you might lose production. If it's not comfortable enough, you might lose production. So how do you set it up so that it will work for your team? What are the access points? Do they need light? Do they not need light? Do they need a coffee room? Do they not need a coffee room? And so on.
It's good to demonstrate that kind of empathy and really understand what people need and appreciate the idea that when people are doing high performance work, working hard at whatever it is, creating the environment, the hive, the habitat for them to feel comfortable. Air conditioning has to work. Windshield wipers have to work. Anyway, so I appreciate that. All right, let's move on to the next topic here, which is about defense. So honeybees collectively defend their hive against predators. That could be other bees, could be mice, could be bears, could be people. And when a threat is detected, the bees release a pheromone that alerts the other bees and stimulates a defensive response. And by working together to protect the colony, they ensure the safety of the queen, their babies, and their food resources, and that improves their chances of survival, and in this case, winning the game of life. What is the focus you have on working together to defend against competitive threats?
First, you rally around a symbol, a logo, a icon, something that you, in the company world, I always try to ask people to say, okay, why are we here? What are we here for? We're here for X Corp. The symbol of X Corp. You have to have pride in that symbol of X Corp. In a sporting world, it's a symbol or a flag. You know that at every major games that Canada goes to, we take a moose with us. It becomes our symbol, a something to rally around. And when you're at a games and there's, 400 Canadians among 10,000 other competitors, as soon as you see that red and white and you see that big C, you know that you're in a safe place. You know that you can go there. At the Olympics in 2016 in Rio, the golfers all came out to support the badminton players. Why? Because they were on the same team, because they had something to rally around. The idea of defense is support. So another word for defense is support, support a common goal and protect against a common threat.
That's a great answer. Not the answer I expected, but a great answer. It's important, I think, for people to identify and belong to a team. And I think that by having symbols like you described, it enables them to identify first who's on their team. And then the feeling of belonging comes after the identification of that. That's really what it comes down to, is that people feel that they're part of the thing that they belong to, and creating a symbol helps them identify that they are part.
Every evening when the medal count comes out, the athletes gather and they look at the medal count. And at certain games, there's a celebration. Hey, we're going to go down to our village, our little area, and we're going to celebrate the victories. It's not my victory,
Right.
but it's my team's victory. And therefore I celebrate. In the corporate world, we can have leaderboards. Sure. But we're going to celebrate the overall victory of the company. And that's one of the things I'd say to any business owner is, like, you want to be successful. You said something that made a lot of sense, which is make it their company. It's not your company. Make it their company. And once it's their company, they're going to work a lot harder and a lot happier. And it's not a mind game. It's truth. It's the truth of saying, you belong here, and we want you to be successful. And it's not always, and it is not always about incentivizing, because that becomes very one-dimensional.
Yeah, it's coin operated. An employee only treats a customer as happy as they are. So basically, if your objective is to create happy customers, you have to have happy employees. So in the same sense that you're talking about on a sports team, is creating both the environment, the opportunity, learning, development, growth, et cetera, so that they'll stay happy for as long as possible and make the thing run as best they can. Mm-hmm. Let's talk next about communication and how that comes into play. And I'm very curious about your answer to this one. So bees communicate in different ways. They communicate through vibrations and dances and movements, but also pheromones. So the dance is like a one-on-one scenario that has to propagate through, but a scent in an enclosed area, everybody smells it at the same time. So basically it's a way to signal everybody at once. And so the impact on productivity is it coordinates activities in the hive, either activities of stay calm or activities of become aggressive.
We had a course that I really enjoyed, and it was called Coach Observation. And the educator said, listen, we're going to go down and we're not going to watch a game, but we're just going to watch the coach. Oh, what? Yeah, you're just going to watch the coach, and you're going to see what he or she does, and you're going to see how that's reflected with the team. Since that information, we did a long study on it. Like, it wasn't just one time, we did it multiple times. And we began to notice that coaches' behaviors translated into the team they were coaching.
Sure.
You're going to say, well, what do you mean? Like, the coach appeared really calm. Mm-hmm. They did. And then they went on the sideline, they paced. Then they gave advice and they looked really assertive. But then when they went down, they put their head down in a book and they started looking. What's going on? Now, those are called mixed messages, right? And the athletes notice this.
Sure.
And they respond in kind. Many times when I've been coaching, I'm looking across, because we sit across a court, and I'm looking at that coach and I'm going, you know what? That person's nervous. I don't know what's up, but something is. I know that I can take advantage of that. And if you think about the athlete is always communicating non-verbally. And so like, if you're hunched over and you're, huffing and puffing, what are you communicating? You're communicating you're tired. Well, I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
Right. But if I do the opposite, and that's why I try to train my athletes to say, listen, just look energetic and look up. And if you're feeling bad, look happy. Right. It's a double-edged sword, because what you're trying to do is, you're not trying to have them fake it, but you're having them to control that communication. And you become the person that's dictating how that communication goes out. Because if it's involuntary, you give something away.
Let's talk about new people on your team. And we're going to talk about this through the context of an egg hatches, becomes a larva, and that turns into a baby bee. And like I said, the nurse bees, which are just female worker bees, that are young, they take care of the larva and they work, to feed them and also keep parasites off them and keep them alive. And so this group behavior of working together as sort of nurse bees is the same thing in a business as having trainees. I'm not just talking skills. I mean, overall level of comfort, their level of skill, their level of interest in learning, and then how you could onboard them onto your teams in a way that integrated them into the team that was best for everybody.
Whenever you have a new person, sharing becomes the most important thing. And this is more of a practical example of, in one of the companies that had hired me, and they were having new people, and I said, so what do you know about this person? You've hired them.
Mm.
What do you know about them? Do you know that they have a set of skills that maybe would be advantageous? Like, you've hired them based on a set of skills that you required, right? Got it. But they've also come with additional skills that we may or may not know. And if you allow them to share that information, that this is how we do this, then what winds up happening is you may actually further your goals faster with that new person. It will give that person a sense of belonging and importance, and it will help to accelerate their absorption rate into your organization. Because if you don't let them have points where they are acting as a leader, or they're acting as a consultant or as a sharer of information, then what you're doing is you're limiting them to their little cog, right? And that cog, then you better explain that cog absolutely perfectly, or it will go sideways, because they haven't yet seen what the bigger picture is. So unlike bees that may be born with a DNA that says, this is already the bigger picture, in real life, you're going to have to explain that.
Yeah. And in a way, it's like creating an environment where people share their strengths and passions, and then integrating those strengths and passions into the overall structure of the system in a way that's harmonious for everybody.
It's also the idea that this person begins to own their responsibility rather than have responsibility thrust upon them.
Right.
Right. A really wonderful story I've shared with other people, but it's about a friend of mine who, when they were little, so when they were being born, so when they were born, how the parents dealt with the kids. So my friend is born, and until then has an older sibling that's in a crib. They want to move the kid from the crib to a bed, the older child, but they don't know quite how to do that, because it's the child's crib, and because children have this thing of that's mine, they don't want to swap. The dad sat there and went, you know what, you're getting pretty big, it's time to get a bed for you. And the kid was, oh, okay, sure. So now there's a bed. And okay, well, you know what, I had to take that crib down because you don't need that. The father unassembled the crib and was preparing to take it out of the room, and said, well, what do you think we should do with this crib? And the older sibling says, well, you can just use that crib. Because the kid now had responsibility, and it was their crib to give away.
Right.
Smart. I mean, think about that. If that's how we dealt with people that work for us.
Great story. I appreciate you sharing that one. You got me thinking about a lot of things. Let's talk about cleaning the hive. And the worker bees work together to keep the hive clean and free of either dead bees or debris or invaders that come in there. And they remove those debris and they bring them outside. So the inside of a beehive is super clean. And the impact on productivity is that this collective effort to keep things clean reduces the spread of disease and parasites within the hive. And it promotes the overall health and productivity of the colony, because they're not wasting time and energy fighting off defenders. So the question I have for you, in terms of the hygiene of a sporting team, I believe it comes down to understanding statistics would be like the parallel with this, and keeping track of numbers and performance in ways. How do you view the importance of measuring accurate performance of people through like either KPIs or whatever? What do you measure in sports, and how does that relate to business, and how important is that overall?
I think there's a great quote that which you cannot measure, you cannot change.
Yeah.
Right. And whether we do it consciously or unconsciously, we're always measuring.
Yeah.
Right. We're always measuring, and we measure with our eyes, we measure with tools, we measure with our hands. We're always measuring.
Right. Measuring.
I think that the more that you're able to put numbers, because numbers don't lie, right? The more you're able to put correct numbers into places and systems, the more productive you're going to be. So, example of cleanliness, if you have a clear desk, or if you have a clear workspace, or if but the easiest example for that is in terms of processes. And we've heard about this before. We've heard of people that wear the same thing every day.
Yeah.
Multiple of them, but they wear the same thing. I learned that very, very young through one of my dad's colleagues, and is a very smart guy that went to Cambridge. I could tell you exactly what he was going to wear.
Sure.
Because he's going to wear a blue jacket with his Cambridge tie, a light blue shirt, gray slacks, and black shoes.
I know
Every
that guy.
day.
I know
Every
that
day.
guy.
Right. And latterly we learned that what that helped was his productivity, because he didn't have to think about it. When we think about kids in school uniforms, it's not to be posh or uppity. It's to reduce the idea that you have to think about the latest fashion. This is what you're wearing. The more things that you remove that you have to think about that are in fact mundane, the more productive you're going to be. That's one way of measuring. That's the cleanliness factor. That's the form factor. The statistics factor. Then I can tell you a very interesting story about how funding is done.
Okay.
And funding in a system used to be, well, if you hit this mark, 20th in the world, let's say, you're going to get some money. So it doesn't matter what you do until you get 20th in the world. Like, as long as you get that, we're going to give you funding. Well, smart minds said, well, wait a minute. Now all we've insured is that this person's going to be 20th in the world. That's it. That's what we've insured. Okay. Well, they're going to say, well, to show improvement, if you're 20th in the world for 2 years, but after that, you got to be getting better, or otherwise you're just having status quo.
Sure.
So now, if you want to get funding, you better now be 18th or 15th or so. We have to see this upward trajectory. Right. And as long as we see this upward trajectory, we'll keep giving you money. But when that trajectory stops, it means you're no longer performing at a higher level. You've hit your limit. You've done it. We're going to give you a couple of years, and that's the end. If you want to translate that into a department within your organization or your own business, your own small business, think about it this way. Well, as long as my profits keep going up, right? As long as my production keeps going up, if my production goes up but my profits go down, I've got to figure something out. You're going to have to figure out what you're going to measure your business on. Most businesses then are measured on profits, retained earnings, right? Okay, well, everything else is going to feed into that retained earnings.
Sure.
You're going to have to go backwards to understand statistically what contributes to that or what takes away from it.
Right.
And if it doesn't, and you just kind of go, well, that's okay, I'll just, whatever, I'll just, we had a bad year. Why did we have the bad year? And so I think the importance of statistics is giant. And so this is the vicious loop, also requires money.
Right.
So you have to figure that out. You have to figure out where the time is spent to get the money you need to create more time, to create more money.
That's right. Just in hearing you talk about this, I use the word cleanliness, like they're cleaning the hive, but really the word that encompasses both of the two sides that you said is hygiene. So you need hygiene of information, and you need hygiene of sort of processes that enable you to use that information in a way. I use clean, but really it's hygiene, like that word of tidy, I guess, or like, the bees are doing it and people are doing it. And I thank you for that example. Is there anything else you want to add to the podcast?
I think the first thing where we started off is to understand that everybody on a team serves a different purpose. No one is higher or lower. And that applies for society, and it applies for sports, and it applies for business. Nobody can be diminished among your team because they all serve a purpose. And I'm glad that you're doing this, because I think people will figure that out, that these bees, every bee in that thing serves a purpose. Be that sitting around, and you might say, well, those drones are kind of useless, but they're not, because without at some point there's no queen bee.
That's right. I don't think they're useless. I think they use a lot of honey, and they use that honey to propel the genetic information into the future. And that's a useful thing for them to do, as important as any other role in the hive, because without any individual roles, then the hive doesn't survive. All collaborative species work together to gather more energy in the shortest period of time with the least amount of work. The fact that you're alive means you're part of a team that provides you with food, shelter, water, money, and emotional support. If you're watching this video, we're on the same team of curious people on planet Earth. If you enjoyed this discussion about teamwork, please subscribe to this podcast Lessons from Nature, Modeling the Secrets of the Bees. The next 3 episodes on the psychology series cover plans, specialization, and communication. Ram and I will see you there. Visit projecthoneylight.life for more information about living in harmony with the rest of nature.